Responding to United States President Donald Trump imposing a 30% trade tariff on South Africa from the 1st of August this year, President Cyril Ramaphosa said South Africa maintains that the 30% reciprocal tariff is not an accurate representation of available trade data. Also, South Africa will continue with its diplomatic efforts towards a more balanced and mutually beneficial trade relationship with the United States. That was quoting President Ramaphosa and his response. Now, this comes after the president returned from attending the BRICS Summit in Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. And to get the business sector's reaction to the matter, we are joined by the CEO of Business Unity South Africa, Khulekani Mathe. Khulekani, thank you. It's great to have you on the program. Thanks for your time.
Good morning, Leanne, and thanks for having me.
So we look at this 30% trade tariff being imposed on South Africa by the United States President Donald Trump. What was your reaction when you heard this?
Well, imposing 30% on South Africa will unfortunately have a negative impact on the South African economy. So we were not pleased at all. But we were also not surprised because the threat was already hanging there, even though we'd hoped that with the suspension, the 90-day suspension and the negotiations that had started following the White House meeting, we'd hoped that a better outcome would materialize. So unfortunately, we are where we are, and this will affect us, will affect growth in our country, and will affect jobs.
Yeah, and that's I think the biggest problem, because South Africa already struggling with a massive unemployment rate, and now we need to add this to it. And I want to get an understanding from your side in terms of the industries that we feel are going to be most affected, because I imagine those risk of job losses pertain to certain industries, and this is a great worry. What are we looking at?
So indeed, Leanne, the impact will be most felt in certain sectors and industries of the economy, but the impact will also be regional to some extent, in the sense that obviously those industries tend to locate in certain sectors. So let's start with the auto industry. The auto industry will be affected. I mean, we export a significant number of units to the United States. Now, auto production takes place essentially mainly in three provinces: Gauteng, the Eastern Cape, and KwaZulu-Natal. A significant employer in these localities, and so the impact from a jobs point of view will be most felt in those regions. In the motor industry. Of course, you then have agricultural products, citrus in particular. Again, this is the production takes place in certain regions, and those regions will be mostly affected. And then we've got base metals and other manufactured goods that will be affected, or that are exposed to these tariffs in entering the U.S. markets. So the impact, just to put it into perspective, as I've said, will be sectoral, but will also be regional. It affects, our exports to the U.S. Constitute about 7.7%, thereabout, of our total exports.
Yeah.
And that sort of accounts for 2.2% of our GDP. So that is the extent of this impact. It doesn't mean that all of that goes away. It just means that there is likely to be a reduced demand of our products as they face these tariffs in entering the U.S. market.
So the president remaining optimistic, the president still saying, and I quoted him in the beginning, saying that he is basically still in the negotiation phase, even though President Trump seems that, no, this is it, it's over. But Ramaphosa says this 30% tariff is based on a particular interpretation of the balance of trade between South Africa and the United States. How will this impact on South African companies who have trade deals directly with the United States? And is there time for the government to still negotiate, or are you also understanding 1st of August, that's it, it's happening?
Indeed. So that is what we know, is that these tariffs will come into effect on the 1st of August. The question is there a possibility that between now and the 1st of August, a different deal is negotiated? Unlikely. Trade deals tend to take years to conclude. And so to expect one to be concluded in such a short time is not, I think, something that's likely to happen. But it is possible that in the time that remains, parties are able to at least reach an understanding of how to deal with these matters going forward. I think we should appreciate that the President of the United States understands that you just cannot impose these high tariffs on many countries in the globe over a long period without consequences. So clearly, this is intended to trigger an action, concessions from those countries on whom these tariffs have been added, and that at some point when those negotiations conclude, you're likely to end in a different place. I think the president did say that, President Trump did say that, well, look, this can be adjusted, either way, and threatening that if whatever you add by way of retaliation, we will add that to the tariffs. But there's also a possibility that if a different agreement is reached, these could be reduced as well. So I think there is room. And I agree with the president in being optimistic about the situation.
So it's been a roller coaster ride with relations between the US and South Africa since President Trump took office, and we know this. We've seen it play out this year from the very beginning of the year. The president visited, our President Ramaphosa visited, and we thought, okay, maybe things would be a little bit better. Now we've seen President Cyril Ramaphosa returning from Rio de Janeiro in Brazil, where he attended the 17th BRICS Summit. We heard at that time Trump threatening more tariffs on BRIC countries. So I think the question to you is, there's a lot of analysis and some suggesting that South Africa's geopolitical non-alignment, especially with BRICS, China, Russia, may be directly affecting South Africa's relationship with the United States. What do you think? What are your views on South Africa's relations in BRICS and how it's affecting other relations we have outside of this grouping of countries?
Look, I think it is known that the President of the United States takes a dim view of this BRICS conurbation of countries and sees it as not being aligned with the U.S. interests, and that this has been ventilated in the past by the White House, and so yes, we do understand that that's the position, but South Africa has to be friends with everybody. We are a small economy and a small market on our own. We can't just have one set of friends. We've got to find markets for our products in the East, in the West, etc. And I think South Africa must continue to nurture these different relationships because they matter to South Africa. But of course, in the global economy, trade matters for all countries, not just for South Africa. What we sell to other countries is not because they like us, it's because it matters for their economies too. And so I think that will also form part of what is taken into consideration in how these relationships are configured, not only from our point of view, but from the point of view of the US as well.
Yeah. And the reality is that, as you say, I mean, South Africa can align with whoever it wants to align with. And I mean, when you look at the BRICS countries, it's growing. The membership is growing. We saw brand new countries there. We've also seen others that are wanting to be admitted into the BRICS bloc. It represents, at this point, nearly half of the world's population and accounts for over a third of the global GDP. How can we use this to our benefit better? And is it doing enough for us at this point in time? Because the reality is that we've been promised a lot out of BRICS, that this is going to do so well for South Africa. But are we seeing some tangible results right now? And if not, how do we make it work for us even better?
I mean, as they always say in sort of the trade speak, that governments negotiate trade agreements but it is actually businesses that trade. Governments don't trade. And so I think that the BRICS bloc of countries and its growth and strength and all of that is important. It is important to have friendly countries with whom, as business, we can then start to negotiate deals with our counterparts in those countries to sell more products. So we welcome that. And over time, we've got to make sure that we expand our markets, we get into the BRICS countries. The numbers at the moment, say for sort of China, India, and those type of countries, the numbers in terms of how much we trade with other BRICS countries are still relatively low. So there is ample opportunity there for growth, for really accessing those markets. And I don't want to use the word flooding, but what I really mean is get our products into those markets.
Absolutely.
And that will help balance our exposure to economies that may be taking a view, such as the United States at the moment.
It's very, very important. And I mean, I know you spoke to the issues that our regional countries and also our neighboring countries are going through. I mean, if we've got things like AGOA, which we're still waiting to hear on. I mean, many are assuming, forget about it, it's not going to happen, not the way Trump has been speaking. I mean, just, news breaking overnight, we saw Lesotho declaring a state of disaster over mass unemployment as US tariffs devastate the economy. AGOA, let me leave this on a final note. Your views on AGOA and even further repercussions for ourselves and, as you say, neighboring regional countries as well.
Yeah, I mean, we remain of the view that AGOA has been beneficial to the South African and the African continent as a whole, and this is backed by data. And our view would be that it would be better if AGOA were to be extended for the African continent. The vibes, obviously, coming from the US do suggest that, look, it probably is unlikely. We remain hopeful that it can still be extended because it has these kinds of benefits that go both ways. I mean, what you're saying about Lesotho just indicates to you that these kinds of decisions are not without consequences. And unfortunately, it's the poor and workers that are going to suffer when the effects of such massive tariff hikes are take effect.
Indeed, they are. Khulekani Mathe, we'll stay in touch. We'll see how things go in the lead up to this deadline on the 1st of August. That's the date that's been told that tariff increase will happen. 30% is where South Africa will stand when it comes to the United States being imposed on our country. So that's what we wait and see. And then also a little bit further down the road is AGOA. And we wait to see what the story is when it comes to AGOA losing that zero tariff issue, and that's another big problem that we worry about. The deadline for that is the 30th of September 2025. That's when it's set to expire. Will it be renewed? We don't know.